NFR.
NFR Extra is a podcast dedicated to the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo and features icons and personalities that embody the Western lifestyle.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of, I think there's an understanding now with some of the top guys that my question you don't necessarily have to answer my question if you don't want to. The point of my question is to give you your moment. Yes. Your moment to say what you want to say, your moment to soak up this win. And I will always remember it because it was the highlight of the entire experience for me. It was the best interview of the night. And it's just, you have to just work on people. It's like the 12-year-olds. You just keep working until they open up. But it is hard. And you can't just dread the ones like that. You have to say, I'm going to run into these people again, because the rodeo world is very small.
This is pro rodeo announcer Andy Seiler, and you are listening to NFR Extra. We're very, very honored and privileged to have Janie Johnson with us. This is not Johnson anymore, right? We've got a brand new name, or what are we going by these days?
I guess it's Johnson Finlay or Janie Finlay or whatever you guys. I'll still be Janie Johnson for the crowd, I think. I just don't want to confuse everybody, but yeah, whatever you want to say.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll go by your television name. That's perfect. Okay. So let's go back and talk about growing up with a bronc riding dad. What does your family background kind of help you, not only growing up, but with the career path you've chosen today?
Well, we talk a lot of rodeo. We always have talked a lot of rodeo ever since I was a little kid. It's a little bit biased to the rough stock end at my house, a little bit with my dad, and the saddle bronc riding. But a lot of the rodeo side of my family, too, is also on my mom's side. My mom showed a lot of cutting horses. My grandma was a big cutting horse person. But my grandmother's first husband that passed away, he was a bareback rider. He was an NFR bareback rider. And then, like, growing up, they all grew up in Las Vegas. So the NFR was really important to my mom's side of the family. I think my grandmother never missed a performance of the NFR in Las Vegas. Wow. For her entire life. You know, it was just, it's very important to that side of the family as well. So rodeo is a big deal at the Johnson household, but my dad was retired whenever I was born. So I didn't have to grow up on the road. I didn't have to grow up going to lots of rodeos. It was, I was very lucky. My parents were very good about making it about whatever I wanted to do. So I high school rodeoed, junior high rodeoed, and then eventually did do college rodeo as an independent. So that was, a part of it there as well. But I did a lot of other things outside of the Western industry. I thought I wanted to be a film producer. I did all kinds of other sports in high school and college and different things. And so, yeah, it was a healthy mix. It was a great way to grow up. But the ranching was also maybe more prominent than the rodeo, too. We raised Angus cattle out in Canyon, Texas. And so that's kind of been a little bit more of my upbringing on that end.
When you say that you were wanting to go into film, talk a little bit about how that actually looked, because where rodeo and TV is at right now compared to when you were maybe dreaming of this, what was that actually really looking like for you?
Right. Well, you couldn't really say, oh, I wanted to be an interview sideline reporter at PRCA rodeos, because that job didn't exist. I mean, if we think about it, the Cowboy Channel hasn't even been around it's almost 5 years, not even 5 years yet. And I just didn't even think about that because we watched the NFR, but that was the only rodeo that was on TV, really. I mean, I know that other rodeos have been on TV in the past, but not a full-time career. It was just a few a year. And so I really loved movies growing up. I did a lot of acting and made a lot of films and did a lot of short films and things like that in high school. And I went to the University of Texas at Austin. I went to their film school. I have a degree in film production, completely opposite of what you would think. And I have no experience in broadcast journalism at all. I'd never done any on camera, anything. But yeah, I went to UT Austin, which is not a rodeo school at all, in case you guys were wondering. And basically just learned about how to make films. And I did a lot of production. I did directing. I did producing. I know how to edit. We shot a couple short films. I've been in some films like as like a little side thing whenever I was in college, and just kind of did a little bit of all of that. But the whole life decision thing came down was a lot of my, fellow colleagues in film school were all going out to LA. They were all going out to California. That's what you did if you were wanting to be in the film industry. And I had my barrel horse, and I didn't know what I was going to do because I was not going to leave my barrel horse, and I wasn't going to sell him. And so I had to do this one like class project where we had to interview somebody in a job position that we admired. And I didn't really know anybody in the film industry. And my dad was like, the closest person I know to production is a guy named Jeff Metters, who did all the TV production for our rodeos whenever I was rodeoing. I was like, oh, yeah. I didn't know, Jeff's the guy on the NFR. Like, okay, yeah. And so he gave me his phone number, and I interviewed Jeff. And that was the start of a very long journey. Thank you, Jeff Metters.
Wow.
Now I've got one question before we move on with that, because I want to go back to UT Austin. So I went to journalism school, and they made us do kind of like what you're talking about with film production. We had to do everything. Was there one thing that you were just, because you're so talented at so many different things, was there one thing you were just awful at? I mean, you knew immediately, because I did the weather one time, and it was, I just bombed. Like I could not work the green screen. So I knew immediately I'm never going to be a weatherman. But was there one thing in film production where you were like, nope, can't do this?
That's a good question. Well, one thing I will say, this wasn't necessarily something I did in film school, but I'm really, really glad that I wasn't a broadcast journalism major, because I would have never ended up on camera later on, because I can't for the life of me read from a teleprompter. We've had to bust out a teleprompter a couple times at Cowboy Channel, and it's like a known thing. Like, I'll memorize anything. If I can memorize it, it's fine. But if I have to read it in real time, I mean, just help us. There's no way. And so I'm really glad, because I would have been pretty quickly kicked out of the on-camera position in broadcast journalism school if that would have been the case. Yeah, the film industry, I quickly learned, wasn't for me really either, because you spend all day long. I mean, not just all day, you spend weeks even shooting, like a 1 minute long scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's actually quite boring. And it's a lot of perfectionism. You come back, you're like, we're still shooting this one scene again. And it was just, I mean, I would have never made it. Live TV is so much more exciting. Rodeo, and I mean, even the rancher stuff, it's all just more quick pace. Like, you got one chance to get the shot, you get it, and you move on to the next thing. Yeah. So, yeah, that probably would be something I wasn't just naturally great at. I wasn't naturally great at any of it, to be completely honest, but I did have fun with it.
That honestly comes shocking, I think, to Andy and I, that you were not naturally good behind the camera. When you think about like Janie Johnson and this high-spirited energy and interviewee, you talked a little bit about this as we jumped on the call, but I want to make sure we talk about it for the actual audience. Interviewing athletes, how complicated is it to be in front of the mic versus actually the interviewee?
Oh, it's completely different. And I never really realized it. I remember when I would kind of talk to people and say, yeah, you just answer the questions. Like, it's super easy. Well, now that's like, I'm on a podcast or I'm being asked questions. You're like, oh, you only have one chance, and you're kind of coming up with things on the fly. You don't have any chance to prepare. It's not easy being interviewed. So I have kind of an empathy with that. But I had such an advantage in how I got started, because I did producer work for Jeff for 5 years. Actually, at NFR, I was his associate producer. And when my first on-camera job, Jeff just needed somebody to go to junior high finals. And I hadn't even really thought about being on camera yet. And he just needed somebody to go. And so my first job was interviewing 12-year-olds. I mean, there's really no better way to get like thrown into that. Nope. I mean, it was low pressure. 12-year-olds are the hardest people to interview in the world. But if you can like, we all know, like if we all have nieces, nephews, kids, whatever, that if you can get them to start talking, it's the greatest because that's just the best content. They're so funny. Kids are the best.
Yeah.
And so it just became like so much fun to just see how I could get the shy 12-year-old to just have fun with it and really show his personality. And that set me up so much to interview adults later on. There was no better way to handle that and to kind of transition into that. But athletes are tough, and especially certain ones. And I'll just, there's no greater feeling to me than knowing, because you kind of, when you interview a lot of the same people, you kind of know who the talkers are. Right. And who the ones that are not so much. And I'm not going to say who it is, but there was a particular team roper that was doing really well at this great rodeo, a big rodeo. And the first interview, I think I asked him a question that was not a yes or no question. And he just looked at me panicked, and I think he just said yes. And I was like, I didn't even ask. That wasn't even have anything to do with whatever question I just asked. Like, don't never ask a yes or a question you could say yes or no to. I've learned that the hard way too. And then by the end of the rodeo, he ended up winning the rodeo. And so every time he would win a round, I would talk to him and be like, okay, what do you want to talk about? Like, we're going to get to this by the end of this event. And then by the time that he actually won the big event, he gave one of the best, longest answers. And I will always remember it because it was the highlight of the entire experience for me. It was the best interview of the night. And it's just, you have to just work on people. It's like the 12-year-olds. You just keep working until they open up. But it is hard. And you can't just dread the ones like that. You have to say, I'm going to run into these people again, because the rodeo world is very small.
Well, and you make a good point, because cowboys and cowgirls, more often than not, are hardworking, humble people, and they're raised to be stoic. So to get someone that's not a rodeo queen to extemporaneously talk about themselves or how good they did, it's just not natural to our sector of the industry.
I think that's a great way of putting it, because it's really true. Humble people. And it's way easier to get somebody to talk about their friends or to talk about someone else that they love than it is to talk about themselves, which is a great problem to have. That's a good thing about a person, and you'll see it a lot in rodeo, but you can make it work as well.
Do you feel like overall interviewing athletes has become a little bit easier now that media in the industry has existed a little bit, or I guess for about 5-6 years now?
Tenfold. Yes. It's so much better. We don't even do media training or anything like that with these athletes. A lot of these big professional sports do media training. Well, there's too many members in the PRCA to be able to do that many people. But yes, I think everybody's gotten way more comfortable with it. Like the very first year of Cowboy Channel, people were surprised to even have to go do an interview. And then it was just uncomfortable and shocking. Well, you interview a lot of the same people because we do so many rodeos, and we especially did that first year that I did. I think I went to like every rodeo that was on the schedule in COVID year. And so people get comfortable with you. I noticed it so much with like the rookies. Like there's so many guys that are like number one in the world now. Damian Brennan is a great example. I gave him such a hard time. I interviewed him when he was a rookie, and he was like the worst interview ever. I said that to him. He's an Australian. We're all friends. Yep. He's a friend of mine. And I was like, Damian, like you can talk. And he's like, wow, it's so hard. Well, now you see him win Houston. You see him number one in the world. He's an amazing interview. He's an amazing talker. He just has warmed up to it because he's been doing it. There's been the opportunities to do it. So it's good.
It's funny you say that, because Boyd made a point about interviews at Houston. And I think that once they know that you understand and appreciate what they do, they feel more comfortable and they open up. So it's almost like if you can set something up on a tee for them, whether it's talking about a horse or a traveling partner or something like that, then it's like, okay, he or she is one of us. So now here it comes, but if you just start with how does that feel or what, then it's like, oh, well, you're not one of us, you're not from our clan, so it's interesting how if like you say, if you ask the right question or you talk about the right thing, then it's just like opening up the dam and the river flows.
Right, exactly. And it's kind of, I think there's an understanding now with some of the top guys that my question you don't necessarily have to answer my question if you don't want to. The point of my question is to give you your moment. Yes. Your moment to say what you want to say, your moment to soak up this win, and just, you only get that chance once, especially at a big win like Houston and Calgary or anywhere. Like, this is your chance. You can take it wherever you want to take it. And now I feel like these rodeo athletes kind of know that. They're like, okay, she asked me about the horse, but I can go any direction I want.
Let's take a quick pause and we'll be right back. Do you need a dose of social? A dash of insider info? Then the National Finals Rodeo's social network is set up just for you. Get updates, insights, unique content, and much more on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can find us at /Las Vegas NFR. Be sure to use hashtag Wrangler NFR on your posts and tweets. There's something for all rodeo fans. The biggest stage, the brightest lights, the Wrangler National Finals Rodeo.
Speaking of big moments, you've got a big one right now with Rancher, and I want to hear where this concept came from and tell us about how it's gone so far.
It's been so much fun. I can't take any credit for the concept. The show has existed in the past. My great friend Kirby Schnorr used to host it. She's now the host of Farm Her. She's got an amazing farm background. And it was kind of random at first. I didn't really see myself as the host of this, but I did kind of grow up on a ranch a little bit. And they asked if I wanted to do it. And I thought, well, that could be a really fun adventure. It could be, a fun way to mix it up and a good way to mix that in with the rodeos. And so we travel across the country to all these amazing ranches. I get to kind of handpick them myself, and we do 3 ranches a trip and just meet some of the most amazing women in ranching. Anybody who's been around ranching knows that women are very involved and they're very much in the mix. But most of the time they're very humble and they're kind of hidden in the background. And so I try to go out there and find those stories. But we always do an activity. We did shipping day. I'll ride horses and go out and gather cows with these women, and we'll bring cattle in. We're about to do branding season in Arizona. So it's a very participation-based show. I try to just really get in there for the day in the life and show people all the hard work and everything that because there's also men there too. It's not just women, but the show is focused on the women's stories. Just kind of what these people do for a living and how they feed the world.
I love that. So and it gives you that opportunity to share the history, because I want to have you share a little bit about your history. When you backpedal, you've mentioned Vegas, you mentioned your grandma. Tell us a little bit about your great-grandfather, Benny Binion, and Las Vegas for you growing up.
Well, I didn't grow up in Las Vegas, which is, I consider a little bit of a blessing. No offense.
None taken. None taken.
You didn't technically grow up right in Vegas, so there you go. Well, I'm very biased towards NFR in Las Vegas. I will say that. And people will always know that about me. I think that is the home of NFR forever. It adds such an energy, and it's just something that's really, really near and dear to my heart. My great-grandfather, Benny Binion, loved rodeo, and he loved cowboys, and he had one of the original Vegas casinos in downtown Las Vegas. But Benny's whole lifestyle was very cowboy, very ranching. He had a big ranch in Montana and would do anything for the cowboy and like the hardworking man kind of situation. And he loved rodeo, and it was kind of one of his life goals to try to get the NFR from Oklahoma City to Las Vegas. He felt that needed to be the home. A lot of people, and there still is like a very small percentage of people that are still upset that it's not in Oklahoma City. Very, very small. And it was kind of a big move. It had been in Oklahoma for so long, and Sean Davis and I don't even need to go too deep in the history. There's a lot of amazing people that were involved in this process, but it was a big deal to try to move it. And so once they got it moved, I feel like it completely changed rodeo history and PRCA history and made NFR what it is today. And so it's just something that's been really important to my family forever. Like I said, my grandmother has never missed an NFR performance since like the very beginning, except for this last year. And I've been going every year since I was a baby. I mean, they take the big wide shot photos of the arena. I could find myself as a baby, as a toddler there. And yeah, I'm really proud of that history because I do think it's done so much for rodeo. And I don't know, is there anything else that you had specific to that other than just...
No, not anything specific. I think it's just fun to highlight that connection that you have with Vegas, one for sure, just because I am definitely biased as well. I think it's an incredible event here in the city, and it's really one of the only citywide events that still to this day takes place, over 30 properties, and it truly does become Cowboy Town. But that kind of leads me into my next piece, because I want you to talk a little bit about your Australian husband and your wedding and how that all kind of played out with those pieces you integrated.
Yeah, well, I agree. Going back to what you said, it is an amazing, amazing town. Las Vegas has so much history in itself, and there's just no other city that wraps around NFR like Vegas does. So very, very cool. And all my family's still out there too, so I get to see everybody when I go out there. Yes, my husband, also biased on that one. I think he's wonderful. He's great. Jake is awesome. We met before Cowboy Channel, actually. A lot of people think we met from rodeo, but I worked with PBR Velocity Tour for a couple of years before Cowboy Channel. And so bull riding didn't even go around the rodeos too much. And so we met through mutual friends, mutual rodeo friends, saddle bronc riders, and he just kind of kept hanging around. Just kept showing back up to Amarillo, Texas, conveniently. He went to school at OPSU,
yep.
which is in Goodwell area. And so so it wasn't too far, but he just always had to have a reason to drive to Canyon, Texas to come visit me. And we just never quit hanging out. And it's been really great. I have had to interview him a couple times, which is funny. It's super awkward.
Really? Yo, I don't know what to talk about with you.
I actually don't. I mean, I know like some insight, but he knows I take my job very, very seriously. So he's so professional that it actually, like, people think that maybe we're not together if they watch us do an interview, because they'll say like Jake like wouldn't even look at you. He was just so professional and serious. I was like, are you guys still together? I was like, yeah, we are. He just doesn't want to mess it up for me, and I appreciate that way more than him being himself, because if you know Jake, he's a goofball and he'll be really silly and funny. So I appreciate him putting on his professional face. But yeah, it's good. We're moving back up to Canyon, Texas before too long, helping my dad out at the ranch, and then I'll just be traveling for work out of that part of Texas. And so it's kind of a new adventure, but I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, that's awesome to hear, though, that Jake treats it that way, because it is difficult. Like if you're going to interview, especially someone that you're married to, but there have been big moments in sports where, you have to interview your best friend, but you can't act like it's two buddies having a beer. Like you still have a job to do. And I think it's awesome that he respects your position and your career, and treats it as such, and doesn't, I don't want to say cross a line because you're married, but I mean, it's great that you have that mutual respect.
Yeah, it was really important to me. I had this job before I met Jake in some capacity, and yeah, and he's kind of has a brand in itself. When you're a rodeo athlete, you have to also present yourself well I did tell him like smile a little bit because it'll make you more likable.
Your tips and tricks.
Yeah, little tips and tricks. He's a great interview with other people. I've seen him get interviewed with by other people. He's very good. But we're more comfortable with it now. But yeah, it's been good. We have a very good understanding. We just fit each other well. We have a lot of fun, and yeah, marriage is going so far so good.
Definitely an interesting element or journey, especially in the rodeo world. And what is it like traveling between the two of you? Because I'm guessing you're most of the time going opposite ways or different locations.
Oh, yeah. We're very rarely in the same. Look, he'll always end up where I'm at. But, you know, when you're at a rodeo, you're there for 10, 20 days, depending on which rodeo, or just the weekend if it's a smaller one. And so Jake will like show up for the 2 days that it's his set, and then I stay there. And he goes off to the, 10 more rodeos while I stay there. But it kind of works. It's really nice because like he's never questioned my traveling. I've never questioned his traveling. I know he's going to be gone. He knows I'm going to be gone, and we're like good about it. And we have a lot of friends. I've said this a lot. The rodeo world is small. A lot of friends that kind of keep an eye out on us, make sure we're good. People that are good people in our lives, and so the travel hasn't really been a problem. It's been a blessing, and it's nice that he does show up for like a few days. I get like a little bit of a breather, and then he's off, and it's good. Yeah, it works. I don't know how it works. Nobody else seems to have such a crazy schedule, but into like my friends that aren't in rodeo at all, you can't explain the lifestyle to anybody else. Yeah. It doesn't make sense to normal people, but it makes sense to us.
Any plans to go to Australia?
I got to go for Christmas 2 years ago, but yeah, actually they're doing a huge bronc match in Australia in November that him and Damon Brennan are actually putting on together. Jake and Damo are putting it on, and it's going to have a ton of money added, and they're hoping that next year it becomes a PRCA thing, but they're hoping to bridge that gap between Australian bronc riders and, American, Canadian bronc riders. They're calling it the Australian Open is what it is.
Oh, wow.
And so,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a ton of Americans and Canadians are coming over, and it's going to be a big bronc match. And so I hope I think I'm going to that, and Jake will be there, and yeah. So yeah, it's really cool. There's more Australians coming over here than ever, I feel like.
There really is.
So we've interviewed Kai in the past, and he's given us the Australian perspective on the U.S. Let's flip it and go the other way. So from your perspective, what's different or a little bizarre about Australia?
Jake hates it when I say this, but Australians really are like British Texans. It's really true. It's I loved Australia. It doesn't feel foreign really. And like most of the rodeo guys from Australia are from the country, right? They're
right.
Something that is different about Australians is that pretty much all of the Aussies that I know, I've never met an Australian that didn't go to boarding school. Huh. They all go to boarding school because there's not a lot of I don't know about their school system like in the country, but most of them that are ranch people are kind of in the country, all go into the city for boarding school. Like Kai went to boarding school, Damo did, Jake did. I mean, everybody. And that's kind of an interesting culture. In America, I don't know anybody that went to boarding school. So
I don't either.
Yeah. So that's kind of different. But then once you go and visit like their places, they're all ranch people. They're all really good people. Australians are super laid back, happy. I love their culture. The small towns feel very much like small towns in Texas, except every single Australian town, whether it's the tiniest town in the world, it won't even have a fuel stop or anything, but they'll have a pub with like a full deck. Everything has a pub. I can't even believe it. It's hilarious.
Is the bar food the same? Like, do you just go to the pubs and they have like a burger and wings?
Oh, no. They eat way healthier than Americans do. Their pub, it will have like grilled chicken and vegetables, like steak and vegetables. Everything's just like a meat and vegetable. Huh. And like they don't do French fries. Like, I mean, they do French fries, but it's not. So it's like a homemade meal. It's really nice. That's like the number one complaint I hear about us from Australians when they come to America is the food. Because it's just like they can go to any like tiny bar and get like a nice homemade meal versus every bar in America. It's like mozzarella sticks.
What's your opinion on Vegemite?
Oh, it's terrible. I hate it.
That's what I've heard
With
too.
it, though. They're obsessed. If you open my pantry right now, I have like a whole shelf full of Vegemite.
Oh gosh, I've heard it's like
terrible.
Salty.
Oh, it's so salty.
It's so salty. It tastes like licorice with salt, like salty licorice in like a jelly form. It's terrible.
It's
To
like
all my
grandma.
Australian friends, that doesn't sound good.
I think it's like grandma tried to make like a jelly situation and then use salt instead of sugar is how I picture it in my head. That's really mean because I've only ever had it a few times, but.
Right, like she accidentally mixed in the salt, but I've never met an Australian that doesn't like Vegemite either. It's so strange.
Mm.
I don't get it.
They're very into their snacks and they're not that different, but the Vegemite is different. That's everybody's like hangover food. You know, like in America, like if you're hungover, you get like a burger and fries. If you're an Australian, they do like toast with like a layer of butter and a layer of Vegemite.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird people. But other than that, the culture is pretty similar.
Oh. Well, Janie, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see the next chapters that you have in store, because the energy and the enthusiasm that you put into your craft, it relays to those at home that are watching. So please keep up the good work.
Well, right back at you. I appreciate that so much, especially coming from both of you. And we will see you guys in Vegas.
Yes, ma'am. Can't wait to see you there.
Want to experience more of the NFR? Then visit nfrexperience.com, and we invite you to subscribe to NFR Extra on Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you're listening right now. If you like what you've heard on NFR Extra, we would love it if you gave us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe.